So, hi everyone, whether you're watching this through our YouTube channel or whether you're watching this because you received it directly from the Femina group, I'm glad you're here and I'm glad that we can be having this conversation. You have myself, Beth, joined yet again by my big brother, Tim Borody from Advice First, as we continue our conversations around women, wealth, investing, and the importance of women having financial plans, autonomy over their finances, understanding of how to build wealth and generate wealth, all of those types of things. Um, and this conversation really came about from the workshop that we hosted at PDAC. So, the Sunday before PDAC, we hosted our very first in-person women and investing workshop where Tim was able to come and talk about all of the financial foundations. So we had a room of 25 women that came to learn, engage, and grab some takeaways. And I think when I think about that workshop, one of the things I always say to people is I did not expect the level of conversation and the level of questions that happened. I think we had like 3 hours for the workshop, and we really kind of set it out that Tim would have an hour. We'd have an hour with Alicia Milne from Q2. We'd have some time for discussion. And I think that the conversation that you kicked off, Tim, around financial planning, the importance of having an advisor, these sorts of things, took up a good 2/3 of that entire conversation because there was lots of questions and lots of discussion, kind of varying from all over. So I would love, because I know that this was your first time being the only man in the room. Welcome to that dynamic, and having a room full of women, and being able to speak with women about their finances. And so I would love to hear from you, kind of your perspective on that workshop, and the takeaways that you had from that.
Yeah, and again, thanks for having me back. And again, I love having these types of conversations, talking about the importance of financial planning, financial wellness, all of that. And yeah, it was a very eye-opening experience, I think, and one I really enjoyed. I was nervous going in. I wasn't sure what it would be like, but yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there with the level of engagement and the level of openness that people, and especially the women there, were willing to kind of have. And again, those conversations that we had were, again, we had some really in-depth conversations. People weren't afraid to kind of, again, share their situations, what they were going through, challenges they were facing in different situations. And again, like there was no feeling, or I didn't get the feeling that anybody was like, oh, I like that this is a dumb question because I don't know this, or I don't know that, or I don't know how to get started, or who I should be talking to, or that sort of thing. So yeah, it was that level of openness, and just again the willingness to share, I think, was probably like the most engaging part of the conversation, because again, it led to a lot of, again, you said we ended up talking for almost 2 hours about these different topics, because again, we would go down these different paths, and then again, a number of different women would share their experience or what they've been through, and again, offer advice or help to others that were going through similar situations or had similar questions. So it was a great afternoon. Really enjoyed it. And again, I'm looking forward to having more of those conversations in the future as well.
I think I was standing in the back of the room, like tapping my watch, being like, wrap it
Oh, I
up. We got
saw
to get
it.
Alicia on here as well. So, like, let's move this along. But I completely agree with you. I think the thing that we always see with these conversations and why we keep coming back to having them again and again is that we know that the financial system was not made for women. We know that women are kind of playing catch up right now on their own finances, understanding finances. What does money mean to them? We have more women in the workforce than we've ever had before, making bigger salaries, having different options that are given to them in their comp packages. And at the same time, we have women that then face big life events that, again, women haven't been taught to prepare for, around divorce, around a partner dying, around like a big job change or job shift, children, mat leaves, all of these sorts of things that really impact personal finances and impact kind of how you're set up and what you know for the future. And I don't think that it's about kind of the, preparing for doom and gloom in your life going sideways, but it is being smart and strategic about how do I make sure that as life is lifing, I am doing the most I can to make sure that I am being responsible with what I have. And so going into that, as we received feedback from the group and as we really kind of unpacked the conversations that we were having, I think the biggest piece that I walked away with was the how do we get started? So, what are those first steps? What is financial planning? So, we use that term all the time. It's like, you just need a financial plan. You just need to have a financial plan. It's like, well, what is that? And how do I get started? And what do I need to know about it? And who does it? And all of those pieces. And so that's why I wanted to bring you back today and have this follow-up conversation, because I think those tangibles and that practicality of here are the steps, here's what you need to get started, and here's why it's important, are really key for women. So take us through that from your perspective. Kind of what is financial planning first? Why is it important for women? And then what is your role with advice first for helping get those plans started?
Yeah, and actually, I'm going to take one step back even from there and kind of go back to that event. One of the questions I asked the group was like, what do you feel when you hear financial planning, right? And it was like one of those word bubble things, and people were typing in on their phone, and the number one response was overwhelmed, right? Like, I don't, and again, it comes back to that. I don't know where to get started. I don't know what I don't know. And so I just feel overwhelmed because there is a lot there, or there can be a lot to it, is maybe the better way to put it, right? And so I want anybody that's watching this to know that you're not alone if you feel that way, right? And most of the people we talk to, again, they come to us because there's a specific transition going on or a life event. And so I think the very first step is to not be afraid to talk to somebody and ask, right? Like, so talk to an advisor, talk to somebody you know and trust, and who do they work with somebody, right? Like, but it's just not being afraid or not feeling overwhelmed to at least start the process, because the process is going to be different for everybody. When I look at kind of how even we work with clients, it will vary based on, again, where you're at in life, what kind of you're going through, why you're coming to us in the first place. The process from a financial planning standpoint is fairly like straightforward, and I got systemized, and I'll kind of talk about that in a little bit here. But again, the initial conversation is just, hey, who are you? What's your situation? What's your story? What brings you into this conversation today? Because that's always different, and that's why I love what we do, because everybody comes to us at a different place, going through one of those different life transitions. And again, then we can use that to then again help them build out, okay, well, what do you need? What do you need help with today? What do we need help with in the future? And now how do we start to put that together, right? So kind of one of the biggest starting points when we're looking at a financial plan, and I'll kind of outline, in my opinion, what a financial plan should entail for everybody, but is kind of mapping out what we call your financial lifeline, or that financial timeline, to say what are all these different personal life transitions we could go through, and what do we need to plan for, right? So you mentioned like career change, maternity leave, purchasing a house, selling a house, retirement, aging parents, and like helping out with like that generation, having kids and helping out with that generation. There's like 50, 60 different life transitions that all impact your financial picture and your financial plan, that when we're sitting down with people, like for those initial kind of planning conversations, we start to, that's the basis of the conversation, of what are all these things we need to plan around, and then how do we kind of start piecing that together, right? Our big thing is, again, getting to know you and getting to know, again, your story, your values, your philosophy around things, and then again, those life transitions, so we can piece all of that together. But again, it all starts with just conversations, right? Just having those conversations. and getting to know each other, getting to know you and your situation, and then how we can kind of best start piecing that together. So like from a starting point perspective, that's, I would say, don't be afraid to talk to people, like talk to an advisor, talk to multiple advisors, right? This if you're going to undergo this journey, you want it to be with somebody that you trust, obviously, right?
Mhm.
But that you're comfortable with, because again, you're going to share a lot of details that that impact you. And again, finances is a very emotional conversation and topic for pretty much everybody. And so it's got to be somebody that you're comfortable with. But then on the flip side, that it's got to be an advisor that's willing to ask you those tough questions, to have those conversations, because a lot of advisors won't or don't. Is kind of the other side of that equation as well.
I think there's a piece with that I've been noodling on over the last few weeks with this millennial generation. So I always forget what the actual age bracket is for millennials. I'm a millennial, I know that. And I feel like we are this transition generation where our parents and our mothers and our aunts didn't have access to credit until later on in their life, didn't have the ability to have their kind of own independent finances, all of those sorts of things. They generally were expected to have a partner that managed the money and managed the decision making. They're responsible for groceries, they're responsible for like taking care of the kids, they're responsible for those pieces. And then there's our generation that kind of came into this system at a point where we now had, you know, on paper, the equal opportunity to access the same thing as all the men. But we are also a generation that is far more in the workforce. We're now older. And so we have experience, we're making money. And then we're watching these Gen Zs come up who just seem to be like, they don't know a world where money isn't accessible to them. Like they don't know a world where they aren't either investing in the stock market or they aren't setting up their own bank accounts or they aren't like getting their job. And so we're this interesting transition generation. And I think we have such a great opportunity to really be smart about our money because we're also the generation that's making the most money right now out of everyone. And we have the longest runway to be making money and to be generating our wealth because we have enough kind of experience and we're, you know, senior enough in our jobs and all of those sorts of things. And so we have a real opportunity to really set the tone for how women manage money and look at money from this millennial perspective. But I think, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're still playing this catch up of trying to learn and do all at the same time and trying to figure out what's the best move I'm supposed to be doing. Well, trying to figure out, you know, how do I get out of debt or how do I move these things along? And I think that piece around every conversation is personal and every conversation starts with you is so important. And it's such an ethos of what we have here at Femina too, is that everything just starts with trust. And it's like you're in a room that you trust with a person that you trust because your mindset and your emotions connected to how you think about money are going to come out in one way, shape, or form when you're starting to build these plans. And so I think that that is like really key for people to understand. And here is your suggestion of make sure you trust the person, talk to a few people, make sure they're going to hold you accountable. It does no one any good to just have an advisor that just wants to take your money and it's just like, yeah, we'll make anything happen. And then in 5 years, you're like, why am I not in a better position than what I was in 5 years ago? I'm so confused. What have you done? Type thing. And then you just, you know, are paying fees and all of those sorts of things. So I think that that is a really key first step of making sure that you have that trusted piece there. You mentioned that the process of financial planning is like pretty systemized, or there's a pretty like clear aspect to it. Talk about that a little bit, but then also talk about how advice first. And I say this because I've gone through advice first process. I know the steps. I appreciate the steps, but talk about how you and your team walk through that, even though there is this systemized piece, which I'm assuming is more around regulations and all of that sort of thing. But then how you personalize that for your clients.
Yeah, so when we're talking about again kind of the idea of a financial plan, right? There's a lot of different aspects that go into that. And again, this is where people can get very overwhelmed or intimidated when you think about kind of putting all of this together because when I think about, okay, okay, we do what I would say comprehensive, like life, like focused financial planning, right? Well, what does that mean? Well, we're looking at you, your values, your goals and objectives, right? What are you trying to achieve as a person? We're looking at all your life transitions. Now that we're also looking at insurance, we're looking at life insurance, we're looking at, again, critical illness, disability, whatever that might be. That's kind of your foundation of most financial plans is, again, the risk management side of it, right? Then we're looking at investments and savings. In my opinion, most advisors, that's where they start, right? They start on the investments. What have you got? Like, right? How am I going to get paid? And like, what have you got to save? What's your assets, right? But again, that's only a piece of the financial planning process. And again, that piece is really just a tool that should be in service really to the rest of your financial plan, right? Your financial plan is, again, what you're trying to accomplish, how you're trying to live your best life with the resources you've got. And the investment piece it's a piece of that, but again, it's more of a tool it's the sail that is sailing the boat, right? The boat is, again, your plan. The investments are kind of like the sail that is helping to drive that, right? But you're the one steering the boat, deciding the direction it's going to go. Again, in the future, we look at distribution planning, cash flow planning. So again, okay, I get to retirement. Well, now how do I get money out of my accounts? What's the tax implications? Tax planning is another big piece of financial planning, and that's an ongoing every year. You and I talk a lot about taxes every year, right? And so again, that's a really important part of, again, a comprehensive financial plan is not just how much am I saving, but where am I saving it? Again, if I have other types of assets, what's the income being derived from those assets? How can I make that more efficient? What do I have to consider there? Again, down the road, you've also got estate and wealth transfer, right? So, okay, I want to support the next generation. Well, how can I set things up today, or what could I put in place today that can help facilitate that in the future? But it's hard to make those decisions unless I know where I'm going, right? Like, what am I going to need of my wealth? And what can I maybe earmark for again, another generation, for charities, for whatever it might be? Everything's kind of interrelated, right? It's really hard to make a decision about one topic without impacting another. Oh, I'm going to save this here, but now that impacts my cash flow over here and my lifestyle, right? Oh, I want to put this money aside for retirement. That then it impacts my taxes today, taxes tomorrow, and again, my estate down the road. So that's why it's important to look at everything, but that's also why it can be very overwhelming for people because there's a lot of pieces. So what we try to do is simplify things down into kind of, like I said, we start with those life transitions. And again, what are the things in the next 1 to 2 years? What are the things in the next 3 to 5 years? What's longer term? And then that's my job as a planner and as an advisor is to then try to simplify this and to say, okay, this is how we can start to kind of map this out and put things together. Most people that come to us, like, again, that feel that overwhelm or that intimidation, like, have kind of things everywhere, and it's like, well, I don't like it's almost embarrassment, right? I don't know where everything is. I don't know like what I've got. I know I need to talk to somebody, but like I can't deal with it all, right? And so a lot of what I do is just kind of cleaning things up and organizing things for people too, to say, okay, well, this is our starting point, because that's pretty important part as well, right? Is understanding where am I at today, and then again start building out the where am I trying to go and what's the best way to get there.
And I would just to pick up on that piece, again, from my own experience, the starting point may not be what you expect the starting point to be, or you think the starting point is, and your starting point may be a few steps back from where you actually think you are. And it again is being able to have those conversations. And there is so much embarrassment and shame around money. And I think social media really contributes to that because everyone looks like they're the wealthiest person on the planet on social media, and everyone has everything figured out, and everyone is just like, made it. And you're there in your house being like, uh-oh, like we're in trouble.
What am
And
I
so I
doing
think
wrong,
that,
right?
yeah, that starting point is like so important. And I think one of the things I remember, when Jeremy, so my husband, and when him and I started working with Tim, one of the things I found really interesting from a partner perspective was that we both completed these like very comprehensive surveys that were sent to us and like questionnaires that were sent to us independently. And it was really interesting then when we sat down with you to compare our answers and compare what was similar, what was very different. And we are very different on many different fronts when it comes to money between Jeremy and I. But then again, from that partnership perspective, having that conversation about, okay, so Beth just wants to like spend all the money and be as risky as possible and throw everything to the wind. And Jeremy's like, maybe we need to have some sort of caution here. I'm not as risky. I want to be saving more than I care about investing. I want to know I have that security. And so finding that middle ground as a partnership also was very, very interesting and a great process to go through because I think leading into the community that we have here at Femina and the women that we typically work with are in, I think, a bit of a unique situation. There are other industries like this, but with mining, when you are working up the ranks, you're one, making very good income. You're making multi six figures just as your base salary. But then the way that mining works, particularly here in North America for some of these more senior level roles, is the bonus structure is what people care about more because your cash bonus can be as big as your base salary, but then you're also getting options and like preferred share units and things like that then have these vesting periods. So then again, from a tax perspective or for when they do vest, what do I do with that cash? I knew nothing about any of that when I started making my executive income when I was with New Gold. And it's like, I think that is a piece where you think about those layers. It's not just like, I have one salary that pays me every 2 weeks, and that's what I have, and that's my income. There are definitely a lot of layers in the mining industry and a lot of different money pieces, whether it be shares, options, bonuses, cash, whatever it may be, that women are dealing with on an annual basis. And that in itself can get overwhelming when you have a cash payment coming out for your bonus in February, and then you have your PSUs being paid out in March, and then you have tax season that you need to have filed by April. And then, your salary is doing another thing. And it's trying to keep track of all of that. And I remember, I think one of the first years that I had shares that vested, I didn't even realize, like I had no idea what the tax implication was on shares vesting and what I even needed to know. And you told me you were like, you have to pay tax on those. And I was like, what do you mean I have to pay tax on those? It's like part of my bonus. Don't I pay enough tax? Like these sorts of things. And so I think again, it's getting that full picture, and particularly for our community because they are generally higher earners that have more pieces than just cash coming in the door from their salaries to be able to understand how that all plays together. And if you're on a 3 or 5 year vesting plan, what does that look like then over the next 3 to 5 years? And how do you look at company matched RSPs versus other accounts that you should have set up and all of those aspects? And I think that is what I have really valued in learning in my own journey of working with you from a financial planning perspective is one, having the hard truths of what are the actual realities of your finances right now and what do you need to take care of? Because when we first started working together, Jeremy and I also had a lot of debt. And it was like, you're not going to get very far if this debt doesn't get cleaned up and you don't manage this debt. And then we started purchasing additional properties. And it's like, okay, so what does that mean? And how do we manage that? And then after we were able to clean up a lot of that debt, it was like, okay, so what do we want for the future? But it was those hard, real conversations that really kind of put us in our place. It was that starting point of that really comprehensive questionnaire that you have, because it made me think about things about money that I'd never thought about around risk, around trust, around mindsets, around what I want and goals I have for life, and how money plays into that. And so I think those pieces are just really helpful to kind of allow the nervous system to just like take a breath and like breathe and be like, okay, yes, there's a lot going on here and there's a lot of details, but it does all come together and make sense. And then working with someone who is trusted to say, okay, now help me figure out these next steps, I think is where you do a really good job.
Yeah, and the other kind of piece of that too is it's not a one and done
Mm.
thing, right? So it's not like, okay, we put everything together. This is where you're at. This is your plan. good luck, right? It's every year, or twice a year, whatever, right? Depending on, again, it's different for everybody and where you're at. But like we would have conversations fairly regularly of, okay, are we getting this paid off? Okay, we knew this was coming in here. This is where it's earmarked for. Okay, did that happen, right? And so having somebody that's going to, again, hold you accountable to the plan, right? Hey, you said you were going to do this. Are you doing it, right? And hey, you got that bonus. Did you put it against your line of credit? Or hey, we said we were going to put it in our RSP and offset the tax. Why haven't you done it yet, right? So
I
some
leave you
like,
just unread, and I just
yeah,
pretend like that message didn't come when those accountability messages come into my inbox. So no, but seriously, they are very helpful, but that is because you are not running their accounts. You're not running my bank accounts. You're not in
right.
my bank accounts. You are advising and you are supporting the plan that we have, but it is ultimately your clients, like my decision if I'm going to follow through on that plan or not.
Exactly. And so again, having somebody that you can have those candid discussions with, right? To say, hey, this is why this didn't, or why didn't this happen? And okay, well, how are we okay, we have the plan. Okay, this is now the impact of not saying we do maybe doing something. So how do we course correct now, right? Or how do we make what adjustment do we have to make to maybe get things back on track? So yeah, again, it's a very comprehensive ongoing relationship. But again, from my perspective, my goal is to make it as easy and simple as possible, right? As clear so that you have that confidence when something comes along, or again, one of these events happens, or again, hey, I got my bonus payment for the year. And now I know this is what's going to happen with it. This is the plan, and I can make like a non-emotional decision. Again, totally understanding that life happens at times, things change. And again, we can make adjustments as we need to. But again, just having that confidence of, hey, this is where I'm at. I know this is where kind of I'm heading. And now I can make decisions based off of that, just gives people that much more confidence when you're in the moment of things, right?
A woman yesterday from Femina said something on a call that we had that's just stuck in my head where she said, my goal is not to cause you stress. And I was like, oh my gosh, that needs to be like branded on a t-shirt somewhere. And I feel like that's so relevant for the job that you do is like your goal is not to cause stress. Your goal is actually to alleviate that stress of the overwhelm and unknown that's around financial planning, money, finances, all of those sorts of things. And a good example of plans changing, again, using myself as an example, over the last 3 years, my income has drastically changed from when I was working with New Gold to now being self-employed and having my own companies. And so we have had to like look at plans and be like, okay, so what does this mean now? Because I was on the trajectory of like, I'm going to continue being in company and I'm going to continue making more and more money. And then we put a real abrupt halt to that and said, just kidding, we're going this direction now. And that's not the plan. And so again, we were able to put a new plan in place that supports our family and just makes it so that we're not in a stressful situation and those types of things. But that is that importance of that open communication and that ebb and flow and that realizing that money happens. Money, everyone has a money story. Everyone has money in their lives in some capacity. And being able to remove that emotion and look at it from a practical standpoint, I think is really important. I have, so we had like Peggy, I know you're on the call and you've been listening. I know that you were like, hey, I have some questions for Tim and some perspective. You also obviously have been very involved in the planning of our Women in Wealth, Women in Investing workshops. You attended the one at PDAC. You and I have had conversations kind of on the side, but I would love to hear any perspective you had one from the workshop or just in your own processing of the information that was shared in early March to now being a month later.
Oh, that's such a good question. I think there were so many takeaways that I took from that conversation. One that has stuck with me is definitely the money story. So, what is your relationship to money? How do you perceive money in your life? Growing up, when I did, so I'm a bit older. I would assume I'm older than Tim as well, is that we weren't taught about money ever, right? You don't talk about money, you don't ask how expensive things are, you don't talk about salaries. money is just not something we talk about. And so when things are challenging, Beth and I are both entrepreneurs and in multiple businesses together, and we see a lot of each other's pieces around money. It's that comparison,
sheer panic around money.
your panic. And we both also did come from really high paying roles into entrepreneurship. And so, like, you get used to a certain level and lifestyle, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh crap, why did I make this decision?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so that's something that I really struggle with in my daily life. And Chris and I deal with it even just between each other. We hate talking about money with each other. And so that's a big one. And I have said to Tim that I need to make an appointment with him, which I do, still on the list. But I even between, feeling incredibly comfortable with Tim through Beth, it's how much comfort do I have? So because I just feel like I'm a disaster. I'm a total disaster when it comes to money. Like, I'm literally in survival mode. I think I'm getting out of that, but it's
I can probably
terrifying.
guarantee I've seen worse.
But I think that that's like the important thing, right? It's like the perception we all have around how everyone else is doing, and then the shame game that we play with ourselves when we don't feel like we are in the same boat as everyone else. And I think, yeah, Tim, you probably have a very different perspective on that because you see people's like everything as to what that actually is. And I think it was something that I was looking at, it was back in like January or February when we were planning for the workshop and we were doing some of our Let's Talk Money talks and things like that. I was actually Googling, average income in Canada, average levels of debt for people my age. So I'm 39 years old. So I was trying to get as much kind of aggregated data as possible. And when I saw those numbers, I was like, oh, okay. That's like far more extreme than what like I assumed that it was. Because I was like, kind of like, oh, who am I to talk about money? Who am I to talk about any of this? There's people who are far wealthier than me, people who make way more money, people who are far more smart with their money than I am, all of these sorts of things. And then I was looking at those numbers and I thought, oh, okay. No, this is why we need to have more conversations about money. This is why we need to open these conversations, why we need to be talking with advisors, why we need to have plans in place, because the overall picture isn't the most beautiful for kind of average like incomes, debts, all of those sorts of things. But if we're not going to talk about it and we're going to think, oh, well, I don't have enough to get started, or I don't have this to get like, I'm too ashamed to get started. Well, then we're just keeping ourselves in a dark hole as opposed to being like, there is a solution. Yeah, it's going to be hard. It's going to take work. It's going to take conversations, all of those sorts of things. But it's better that I start doing that now. It's like the whole thing of like, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The next best time is today, right? It's like getting that momentum of like taking that first step of having the conversation and then figuring out what is the solution that fits you best.
Yeah, and
I
again,
think
it's like it's a process, right? Like again, it's not a hey, we have a conversation and everything's in place tomorrow, right? Like it can take weeks and months to kind of work through things and again, figure things out, get information together, like all of that, right? So like yeah, if it's something that you feel is important you need to do, you want to start that process immediately, like as soon as possible, right? And commit to taking the time to do it and do it properly, right? So I've seen a lot of people come through our door that have a financial plan that don't, right? They have an investment portfolio, or what maybe like, oh, well, he said if I do this, this will happen, or if this, like, but there's no like, well, why are you doing that today? And what's the longer term impact, right? And so again, it's that idea of you want to commit to doing it right because the ramifications of correcting things like in the future can be a lot worse. Like one of the lines we say when we come to that kind of financial lifeline, right? It's much easier to prepare for an event than to repair after the event. And so again, having a plan in place, and everybody's plan is different. Everybody has that different lifeline of what the transitions they're going to go through. But again, preparing for the things that we can kind of maybe foresee or have an idea this might be coming, makes it so much easier when you get there than, again, trying to do something in a hurry. Once you get to that, oh, I have a new job offer. Is it good? Is it bad? These are the compensation packages. What's the impact? Well, if you don't have kind of that framework in place, either decision's good, right? Like if you don't have a direction or an end goal in mind, like any road will get you where you're trying to go. So again, that's where it's important to have that frame at work and that plan in place, so that when you hit these different transitions or you hit these different events, you can make an informed, like, wise decision.
Got some good one-liners that you just dropped in there. I think, we have a few minutes left, but I think like what I'm really hearing from this conversation is, one, the best way to get started is just have the conversation. Reach out to either you or a financial advisor that they know, have the conversation and start getting that feeling of, do I trust this person? Do I believe this person has my best interests in mind? Do I believe that they are someone that I can work with?
And like on that note, I just want to say, and that they'll do what they say they'll do. I know a lot of advisors that say they do financial planning that don't do financial planning, right?
Yeah.
They do investment management, they'll do portfolio management, but there's very little like actual financial planning on the flip side. And like I said, the financial planning should be the foundation of the relationship, right? And then the investments portfolio, like, right, that is in service to you and your plan. So again, make sure that if they say they're doing planning, that they're actually doing planning.
Yeah, ask them about their process. And it's like, I think just taking from that, it's like investing and investments are a piece of your overall financial plan. They are not equivalent to having a financial plan.
Exactly.
And I think it is that holistic nature. When you start that planning process, expect to go into the holistic approach. Like, where am I at now? Where do I want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 25 years? What does retirement look like for me? And commit to making the time to put that thought into place and to have
Mm-hmm.
that relationship. I say all the time, if you are working with someone and they are managing your money, that is like the most intimate thing they could be doing. Like, me giving control and like my money over to someone and my accounts over to someone, that is a really big deal because I am a control freak and I want to know what's happening at all times. And I want to make sure that I have my hands on everything. And so again, it comes down, and yes, you're my brother, but in some ways it's like, I have to trust you on a different level than just my sibling relationship, because you see it all. You see it all, and so it can make family dinners real awkward sometimes if things start going sour. But we haven't gotten to that point, and I don't think we will. But I do think that it is that, like, it is an intimate relationship that you want to foster, you want to care about, and you want to be a part of, and you want to have that mutual back and forth with. But it is holistic. It does take time, but it really starts with have the conversation and just reach
Exactly.
out. And if you're feeling hesitant or reserved or, should I, shouldn't I, then there's no risk in just having the conversation and seeing how you feel afterwards. It's like, just take that action and stop staying in your head about it and put it actually into action and allow possibly a different outcome to happen. As we wrap up, are there any kind of final words from you, Tim, that you wanted to share with the group?
No, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like, don't be afraid to reach out to somebody to, again, if you haven't had those types of conversations, or again, if you work with somebody, but again, they haven't initiated these types of conversations, then maybe it's time to again look for somebody that will, right? And but again, yeah, don't you, it doesn't have to be an overwhelming experience. Again, yes, depending on your situation, there may be a lot going on and a lot to consider. But again, it's our job as an advisor to kind of simplify that and build something that works for you and that you can, again, follow along with, understand. Because again, at the end of the day, like you said, it's your wealth, it's your plan, and it needs to be something that you feel comfortable with and that you're willing to execute once again the work's done. And okay, this is what I want to do, and now I can make those decisions. I can understand this is why I'm doing this, is for this in the future, and it's my plan, right? And so then you get that additional buy-in and conviction to it as well.
And just because we do have a network that is, I mean, it's global, but we do have quite a Canadian presence kind of across the country. Anyone from the country, from anywhere in Canada can have a conversation with you.
Yeah,
Correct?
I mean, I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody. Again, just, hey, this is my situation. Can you even, how do I get started? Where do I get started? But yeah, we're pretty much licensed across the country, and have the option to license anywhere where we may not be. But yeah, I have clients from BC to St. John's, Newfoundland. So yeah, always happy to have a conversation. I love hearing about different people's stories. And then again, if I can help, great. And if not, that's not a problem either. And like I'll always be honest as far as if it's not a good fit and not a good situation for us or for the client, then I'm happy to put you in touch with somebody else as well that might be a better fit.
Right. Well, thank you for coming on again and having this conversation with us. We are going to continue our partnership between Femina and Advice First. We do have an in-person event happening with Tim in Toronto in June. If you would like more information, reach out to me, or if you're on our mailing list and things like that, we will certainly be sharing that information to continue these conversations. And again, we just find there's a lot of power in bringing people together and bringing people into the same space and having organic conversations. So thank you, Tim, for joining us again. We look forward to the next time, and we'll share Tim's contact information when we share this video out as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.